Okay, so what we're looking at right now, this is the MDOT Public Map Viewer. It can be found easily with a quick search of Maine DOT Public Map Viewer, just in your Google, and it's going to bring you to this screen. Right now, I've got the Layers tab opened up. This is basically a GIS tool, lots of different layers to it, which I'm going to go over all of those with you. So you've got your layers, different layers. Let's turn on, say, like federal functional class. You turn that one on, it highlights all those federal functional classes. It breaks all of our main roads up into their different federal functional classes, and you can see that information with the legend box right there. Or you can also see it just by clicking on the word federal functional class. So you can either see it by clicking the legend, or you can see it by clicking that. All right, I'm going to turn that back off. We've also got imagery. So again, it's imagery that you can turn on that you may want for whatever you're doing for analysis. Then we've got our apps tab. The one that I've primarily used here are the different maps. And the reason that we sometimes use some of these, we found that sometimes Google Maps, when we use that, and that's primarily for looking at Street View information, Google Maps isn't necessarily the most up to date. We found a lot of times that Bing Maps, because you can use Street View in this, the Bing Maps tends to be more accurate. So that's what, and for myself, that's what I've used primarily for these tools. I haven't used a ton of them, or the apps. Then we've got our tools, which are different measuring tools, marking mile points. You can get coordinates. You can create a buffer, which is, you can, let's see, I believe it's just by creating a geometric shape on an area. And that'll be an area that you could, it'll give you the information. Get rid of that. So there's a lot of different tools on here that you can use. And then there's this share function, which I am going to come back to this a little bit later, because this is actually a fairly handy little tool here. But that's the quick, just our options here. So in the layers, when we have that drop down for layers, there's some different options that we have here as well. We can do different drawings. We can use, you can draw different outlines, if you wanted to highlight a certain area on the map for some reason, and you can easily delete those. Delete them like that. All right. You can do the same thing with a polygon. And the difference with the polygon is that just like with your earlier tool, it fills it in. And I guess I should be a little more specific. You click to use these tools, then you click again to create another point, click again to create another point, click again to create your third point, and then you double click for your final point, and it closes in that polygon. All right. You can draw arrows on here to point to certain areas. I know we're zoomed out. Those might be more pertinent when you get to different options. You can edit these. You can change the color. You can change them from red to black. You can change the darkness from lighter to much darker. And then you can save those options. You can write, so you can put in text, and then you can write whatever you want in the text. I'm not a very good typer, in case nobody noticed so far. All right. And then they're very simple. You don't even have to delete them. You can leave them in there. You can create all these things, and you can toggle them on and off. So any of these drawings that you create, I'm going to delete them for now. Import, I'm going to come back to this one again as well, because I'm actually going to go over that a little bit. And then base map layers. These are the layers that we have right now. These are our layers that we have in our legend. We went over the legend before. If you had something highlighted in here, you could see what they mean in the legend. Before I continue, when you first get in here, one of the things that I always like to do is I like to turn on this one layer here, nodes. And anybody that's worked in this system knows, when I send you crash reports, they're based on what we call nodes, or links, lines, or elements. So sections between two nodes. And a node is not necessarily always at an intersection. Sometimes they're random. Sometimes they might be put at a point where there used to be something there. Sometimes I don't think there's any rhyme or reason. But this node right here, if you were to click on it, the map viewer gives you all of this interesting information right here in regards to this node, gives you a description, tells you the lat and longs, gives you the date that's just for the mapping, what date it was modified. Gives you the primary route mile point, but you want to be careful that you don't assume that that's Route 1. You got to look at the primary route that's identified, and it should be identified Route 1. Node primary route is Route 1, so that occurs at mile point 74.93. It gives you all of this different information. You know, you have your federal functional summary by legs. Each one of those legs has a different federal functional class. AADT by leg. You know, it gives you all of that information, but it also gives you, you know, these I like to have turned on because they're going to be pertinent later in our conversation. So I'm going to zoom back out just for demonstration purposes, and I'm going to close that box. Okay, so now where do I get all this crash information from? You get all this crash information by hitting this little add button right here. And you can see I've already done it in here. When you get in here, then all you got to do is type the word crash. You type that word crash and it produces these 5 different layers. Now you can see these little pluses right here. In order to add these layers to your main layers, because we're in the add layers option, you just select that plus. Each one, because we're going to talk about each of these. So you select all those, and once you've selected them all and they have that little X, you can hit done. And you can see now that these are all on here. Okay, so what you can see here now is all these little dots. So what each one of these dots represents is this is where a crash happened. It might not be one crash. There may be multiple crashes that happened at one spot. So it'll take the color of the most recent crash. Well, what do all these colors mean? Well, we can either click our legend, or we can just go to our layer and we can figure out what all these mean. So they're based on the type of crash. Every crash is categorized by the type of crash. And so this is for 10 years. So it's from 2013, and this is current. So it gives you all of this information for each crash, each and every crash. And I wanted to show you guys that. And then I guess what we'll do is we'll kind of look at what we have for different options here. I'm going to select that crash one more time. So that I think I got a different one this time, but 2021 28692. So we've turned on this layer. Now we've got these different options. When we click this little wrench icon right here, we've got these different options: search, filter, and view. Let's do the search one first. Now, in order to do a search, you kind of got to know some information about the crashes that you're looking at, because you can search by any of these options. And what that is that's any of these items that are found over in this little table over here. So if you say you knew that MDOT ID, or you know the MDOT ID of a particular crash from a previous report that you got from me or somebody else, you could search by that MDOT ID. So this one is 2021-28692. All right, and I'm just going to close this out because that had that pinned. Search it. And it takes a little time, but boom, it finds that exact same node again. So it takes you there. So you can search by most anything on here by knowing the MDOT ID. You can do it by day of the week, but day of the week is going to produce more information for your searches. So the search can be a useful tool. I don't necessarily use it that much, but again, depending on what you're looking for or whether you want to get specific with information. We're going to come back to the filter data option. Right now, what I want to do is I want to hit the view data. Okay. So when you hit that little icon and you hit that view data, what it does is it produces what you're looking at for data on your map at the time, right? So remember I said we had 10 years worth of crashes from 2013 to 2023. In that period of time, there have been 353,695 crashes. All of those crashes are represented right here on that map, and they're all right here in this little thing. All right. And so you can scroll across, you can see all of that information that we have, you know, when we were looking at it right here in that little blue drop down. Every item in there for each one of those crashes is actually right here, right now for all 353,695. Now, you can't export all of this at once. What do you mean export? Well, if you hit this little icon right here, this little disk, save or export, you can export this information to an Excel file. You could take and you would get all of this data in one Excel file, but it has limitations. It can't export 363,000 crashes with, that many columns, that many rows. It's just too much. I think the limitation is, I want to say 50,000, but I think that might even be too high. That's a lot of crashes still. So you want to limit down your searches or what you're going to be pulling for data when you use that for this tool. And we're gonna go through some filtering, and I'm going to show you how to use that portion of the tool. That right there is what we call the refresh button. The little sets of circles, and that's critical too, because sometimes this data down here won't refresh itself. You'll have a query that includes 10 years, but then you filter that down and you're only looking at actual 3 years worth of data. It'll tell you that you've got the right information there, but you've gone from 2013 to 2021 or 2020, and there's still 2013 data. This is a good tool. Anytime you change any information on your query or anything that you're doing, you always hit that refresh. All right. So let's get into how this little layer works here, because this is a handy dandy little layer. All right. So let's go into the filtering options. All right. So when you click a little wrench right here, you select filter data, and this pops up. And right now you're in data. This has a search area tab. We're going to come back to that later. So you can add conditions or you can add groups. And I'm going to go into both of those here as we're discussing this information. I think, for the purposes right now, we're going to just start out with some conditions. All right. So let's add a condition. So say we want a certain number of years. So we've selected the add condition button. It's given us this little drop down. Well, what does crash ID mean? Well, again, that's just one of the different options that you can kind of look at this data by. And what we're going to do is we're going to whittle this data down. I want to look at 10 years worth of data. So that would be 1 year. Is would be 1 year. We want to go between. So instead of selecting is, we select this drop down and we go to between. Now this system is a little funky. So 10 years worth of data would be 2013 to 2022. We've discussed that earlier. This right here, we've got to use, because it's between, we've got to select the years that we want that are outside of those. So for 2013, we've got to put 2012 to 2023. Okay. Now we could do that and it would just change the number of years that we're looking at, and that map would change. All right. But we're going to add a few more things to this. We're not just going to do that. We're also going to add another condition. We're going to go with, we're going to go to the city of Portland, because again, I like looking at information from the city of Portland. Town name, and you can type in Portland, and we want it to stay is, but some of us aren't necessarily good spellers. What I recommend is, instead of going from value, go to drop down, and then it gives you a drop down for every town name here, and just scroll down to Portland. A little bit more right there. Okay, so now we are looking at data from 2012 to 2023 in Portland, and let's go with, maybe let's add one more. Type of crash. Let's look at a type of crash, because one of the things that we look at a lot in the area of Portland is pedestrians. Again, I could type in pedestrians, but I'm going to use the drop down just to make sure, because if you spell it wrong, it won't work. All right. So now we've got 3 different items. We're going to be looking for these years. We're going to be looking in the town of Portland for pedestrian crashes. We've got those. Data filters are all set. We hit apply. Okay. And it's a little hard to see right now, but you can see right down here in this bottom portion, we're going to start zooming in to Portland. And you can see now all these dots right here are all representing one. And sometimes this can be hard when you're looking at this layer. I said you want to turn your nodes on. Sometimes you got to toggle those on and off so you can see your map a little better. These are all for 2013 to 2023, 22, excuse me, 10 years. These are all the pedestrian crashes that happened in the city of Portland. So again, we can view that data by going over here to this wrench and selecting view data. Now, again, remember how I said you want to be careful your data? 2013, that should be right. It's not all the way back to 2000, but we've got 10 years. I always like to hit that refresh. So that's saying 508 crashes. So this is showing you all this. Now because I've got this data a little bit smaller, now I'm going to hit this. I'm going to hit Excel. Okay, and now it's created the download, which we can select that, and it's giving me my download right here. And here is all of the data that we had, just like I mentioned earlier. So all 509 crashes, scroll down, you've got every one of them right there, and you've got all of those pieces of information, each one of them, departments, traffic signals, the type of location, intersection, straight roads, weather conditions. But one thing I really wanted to point out here, you've got lat and long coordinates for each and every single one of these crashes right now. So now you have the ability to create your own maps. I'm going to change this query up a little bit, though. I'm going to close both of these out. And I'm going to go back into this filter data. And we're looking at this type of crash as a pedestrian. Now, there's something to keep in mind about pedestrian crashes. This is pedestrian crashes by type of crash. That's not the only way that an officer can identify a crash. Sometimes pedestrian crashes are identified not necessarily by the type of crash, but they're identified by the person that it involves. This tool here allows you to get all of the pedestrian crashes where that one might not have. So this one has what we call pedestrian yes or no. Remember, we had 508 before. Okay, so pedestrian yes or no is, and then I'll just use the drop down. It's a yes, no, YN, but you want to select that yes, and then let's hit apply. Oh, all of a sudden we've got more crashes here. What's going on? Let's hit the view data. Let's see how many we've got. 531. So we've got, what's that? 23 more crashes. How can that be? And what happens is crashes are typically identified by the initial not injury, but the initial contact or incident occurs within the crash. So what happens a lot of times is, there could be a rear end crash. I'm trying to think if I'm thinking one of these here is, and again, remember how we had got that? These are pedestrian crashes. These other ones are different types of crashes. So there should be a rear end crash in here somewhere. And here's something else to show you folks too. You can zoom to a particular street. So I happened to be in here earlier doing this, and I know that there was one of these on Mellon Street. So you got to type out the word street or avenue or road or whatever it is. You can't just abbreviate in the town that it's in, and you can hit that search and it's going to take you right there. So, okay, so that's telling me that's Mellon Street right there. So I want to look at this particular crash right here. So this crash here says right now that this was a head-on sideswipe. Okay, so it's not identified by the type of crash as pedestrian. But if we scroll down here and look, there were 3 units. Pedestrians can be counted as a unit as well. So there were 3 persons and there were 3 units. So I looked this information up on my own, and what happened in this crash is cars had sideswiped in an opposite direction. One of those cars diverted into a person standing next to the vehicle, which was the pedestrian. So the pedestrian was not injured, but they were struck by the vehicle. So this was still a pedestrian crash because a pedestrian was struck, somebody standing next to their vehicle, but it's not identified as an actual pedestrian crash. All right. So that's a way to look at stuff from a pedestrian aspect. Let's move on from pedestrians. So we're going to continue with this filtering stuff. And what I want to do here is I'm going to start all over again. So again, this filtering tool is where we're going to be kind of in and out of quite a bit right now. So we go back to filter, we're going to remove all the filters. All those dots are going to pop back up again. They're all back. All right, we got to go back in again. Let's do one by counties maybe this time. So, and I think this time what we'll do is we'll add a group this time. So let's add a condition. And I always like to specify my years, the time frame that I'm using. So that's typically always the first thing that I want to do with my filters. And I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it between. I'm going to do a between on this one. I'm going to do 10 years again. So remember, it's got 10 years is 13 to 22. We don't go to 23 because this is from my perspective. 23 is not accurate. It doesn't have all the information. I want full years. So in order to get 13 to 22, I got to do the years outside. So 2012 to 2023. And and I was going to add a county this time. County, went by, scrolled right by, county name. And I'm not going to bother typing it in. I'm going to select it, Kennebec. And now I had mentioned to you folks that I wanted to add a group. And so instead of adding a group, I got to add the different injury levels. Instead of adding a condition, I'm going to add a group. Okay. So this gives me a different drop down. All right. So the reason I'm adding a group is because I'm going to add more than one thing here. I'm going to add a condition just like I did before, but I'm doing it within my group. And I'm going to look for injury level. Injury level is, I'm going to use the drop down for this first one. And it gives you the A, B's, and C's. A, serious, B, minor, C, possible, K, fatal, property damage only. So I'm going to do the A. And I've got to add another condition. I'm going to go back to that injury level again. And this time I'm just going to put B. I'm not going to bother with the drop down. And I'm going to add one more condition. I do the injury level. Went by alphabet. Injury level is C. Now, you may say, okay, I'm good to go. Not exactly. And the reason I add this as a group, because I could have just added this as conditions. I want to separate these things. Right now, what this is going to look at, this says and. So it's looking at the year 2012 in Kennebec County, where an A, a B, and a C injury, all of those had to happen. Well, I don't want it if all of them happen. I want it to be, either or. Either or. So I want it to be an A injury, a B injury, or a C injury. So I don't want them to be and, I want them to be or. Once I do that, I hit apply. All right, so we got our Kennebec County right here. So these are all the crashes in Kennebec County involving injuries, A, B's, and C's for 10 years. Let's view that data. View data, not filter data. Okay, 7546. And again, all of this stuff, you can export this to Excel, Shapefile, KML. Shapefile, very handy if you guys were going to create your own GIS maps with all of, and you extract this to a shapefile, or maybe you take it out and you put it in an Excel file. You got more stuff here than you want. You limit some of the data, then you can resave it. Then you can import it with just the fields that you want, so that it just populates that data into your shapefile. So there's a lot of things you can do with all of this different data, depending on, what you're looking to achieve with your analysis. Oh, and again, as I mentioned before, always hit that refresh icon before you export. Yeah, I think I'm going to do maybe one more, and then we'll get into the high crash location layers. But you guys can kind of see the functionality that we got going on here. So let's get rid of this. We want to go back up into here, into our filter data. I want to remove all these filters, get rid of them all. Okay, so the next thing that I was going to show you guys was I talked about the polygons. There's another way we've done a lot of things so far. I'm going to go to Hobart Street in Bangor. I already searched it earlier, so it's already there. Search. Okay. All right. So this right here. This is Hobart Street right here. What I'm actually looking for isn't necessarily Hobart Street. I'm actually interested in this section of Broadway right here. I just knew Hobart would get me close. Okay. So I use this little search tool here to get there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this drawings. All right. And we talked about that polygon earlier. So I'm going to select that polygon. I got it in black still. I got to change that back because it's too dark. But so I click there, made my one click, my one snap, click there, click there, click there, click there. Now, I like to leave the layer on when I'm doing this because I like to make sure that I get all the crashes that I'm looking for. Basically, what I'm looking for is I'm looking to get the crashes for this particular road. I've got 10 years worth of data here, 2013 to what's more than 10 years. It's almost 14 now. So it's 10 or almost 11, excuse me. It's 10 years plus from 2013 currently to 2023. So I've got this little polygon. I'm gonna edit that because I can't handle that color. Can't even see what it looks like. Back to the red. That's what I'm used to looking at. Let's lighten it up a lot, not that much. Again, all things that you can play with and save it. Okay, just because I want to be able to see this as we go. So I've done this drawing. I've got this drawing saved. You can leave that there, turn it on, turn it off. You know, if it's on though, it's it's something that you can use to select. So you need to leave it turned on if you want to use it, and I want to use it. Because what I'm going to go back to do now is I've gone from drawings, come back to layers, clicking on that wrench, I'm going to filter data. Now I'm going to add, instead of using datas and conditions, I'm going to add the search area. And I'm going to go to drawing one. Remember, that's what that one was. You can have all the drawings you want. And you can actually change the names of them. You know, you may want to, have something more specific because you can leave these things in here. One thing to preface with that is all of this information, all of this stuff, just like anything else, will stay on this public map viewer in your browser until you clear your cache. Once you clear your cache, any of these drawings that are in here, any of these layers that you have added, any of the stuff that you've done that you may leave in here will disappear, unfortunately. And I'm not telling people not to clear their cache or clear their browser because obviously it's a good thing to do. It bogs down your system, opens you up to all kinds of stuff. Search area, select, excuse me, not apply, select. All right, because it didn't have the spatial filter turned on. So now I have my spatial filter turned on. Now I'm going to go back to data because I'm looking at this road and I only want to know the most recent 3 years. So basically what I'm kind of doing right now is I'm recreating a section of road that I would give a 3-year crash report for. I'm going to add a condition. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add years again. That's the one thing I start with. I always start with years. I'm going to go between because I'm going to do a 2020 to 2022, most recent 3 years. So I've got to go 2019 to 2023. And that's all I need. And now I hit apply. Okay. And now I can hit view. Okay, so I've got 32 crashes here. I'm going to take this. I'm going to save it to an Excel file. Okay. Here's my Excel file. Here's my 10 crashes, all my information. Okay, so we've got that information there. And I got that exported. We viewed the data. I think that's pretty much all we want to look at there. All right, so you see how to now you know how to do one by adding a search area. So now you know how to filter the data, add a search area, and you can do that as big a search area as you want. What you always want to do is you always want to make sure that you leave, turn my nodes back on quick like. You always want to make sure that when you do it, you have your crashes 10-year turned on. I want to turn my filter off. And that'll get rid of the layer on. I meant to turn the filter off. I did that backwards. That removes the whole thing. This removes just the layer. So you can see that layer stays there if I toggle that on and off. Just by hitting that right there. Okay. I was going to include one thing for you folks before I did this, and I meant to do this earlier. It was supposed to be part of my pedestrian query that I did for you earlier, and I'm going to just add that back in. So I think I mentioned to you guys earlier, and I hadn't gone back to it. I kind of forgot about it a little bit. I got moving along a little fast. All right, so this isn't, turn my nodes off so I can see everything nice and pretty. Okay, so we've got this. This is great, but I want to share this with somebody. So I'm going to set this share. Now you can create a link. All right, right now it's each of these things is checked. So you can check these. I'm going to uncheck this drawing because that drawing does not need to be part of it. But I've got my layer filters, my map layers, and my map area. I can send an email or I can create a link. I'm going to create a link, which you can take and you can send your map. You should be able to look at the exact data that I have selected based on my map area, my map layers, my map filters, and just be looking at this. And I think it's good for 60 days or something. That should be good for, and then it'll be gone. Or you can export it as a picture, PNG file, a GIF, PDF. You can do that as well. But being able to send it directly in email, creating a link that you can send an email, I think is a pretty neat tool as well. So I just wanted to show you guys that quick. And that's going to conclude that's pretty much it for the Crashes 10-year layer that I really wanted to get into here. So I'm going to remove all the filters. I got a drawing in here. Delete that. I always like to get rid of all my stuff that I don't really need. All right, and I'm going to zoom back out because now we're going to start talking about layers. HCL layers to be specific, high crash location layers. Okay. So I guess what we'll talk about first is I'm going to talk about the node's current. All right, so the node's current, I'm going to turn that on. All right, and you can see when I did that, the map populated with all these little stars. And what each of these little stars is, it's a high crash location at a node. All right, so just like with the other ones, we could search based on, the high crash location ID. This is your high crash location ID right there. Or we could do it by county, critical rate factor, HCL type. We could search by any of those things. We went over the search earlier. All right. We can also filter them just like we did with the other stuff. So say you wanted to filter data. Say we wanted to know the high crash locations for Cumberland County. We don't have to do it by year right now because what we're looking at right now are the current high crash location layers. So I should have specified this earlier. This is for 2020 to 2022. That's the current 3-year study period for all of our high crash locations. So I'm going to add a condition and I'm going to go county is, I'm going to do Cumberland, apply. All right. So these are just for the intersections. These are all the intersections right here. All right. And now just like we did before, we could export these. Can view that data. And there's 107 of them in Cumberland County. We could export those to an Excel file. We have all that information. All right, which is very handy and very neat. But one of the real nice things about this layer here, folks, is that, you can look at these by streets and stuff like this. But say you click on one of these, and we did that earlier, gives you this neat little information here. This is the real gravy of this little apparatus here. See, we have these little wrenches here. Well, on this high crash location layer right here, we've got this wrench as well. And you scroll down to this thing that says high crash location report. All right. And bam, it pulls up the high crash location report, which has already been produced for this current year for the study period from 2020 to 2022. Gives you all the information. This is what we call the this is our kind of our title page. Gives you a little bit of the information: crash rate, critical rate factor, injury percent. Gives you a little legend right here because we're going to be looking at the diagram. Here's your high crash location diagram for the intersection that we just selected. It also gives you a map showing you the exact location what we were looking at. So this is in Westbrook. And then you get an actual summary report 1 and 2 for that actual location, which this is standard. We produce these all the time, but it gives you all. I know some of you may not have ever seen one of these one of these summary report 1s and 2s. And all of this information that you're looking at is all available when we were in the Crashes 10-year layer. All of it was there. Okay. But this is giving you the actual report that goes with that. So this is a really neat feature with these high crash location layers, is that you get an actual report. Now, we're in the current study period. So I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to filter data, remove all filters. I'm going to go back up here because I'm trying to think. We typically start with the more populated areas and we work our way backwards. Sometimes we'll get a request because a lot of different entities know about these layers now. And so say we go into this one in Madison. Go to that one right there. Maybe. I'm trying to show if, so you can click on these again. So you clicked on that high crash location right there. Go to this here. Okay, this is what I was hoping to show you. This is what happens if there isn't a report created for this location. So this is the little form that you fill out. You put your name, your organization, your phone number, your email. And then the one thing that you got to do here, because unfortunately this system isn't necessarily made for these high crash locations. This is for a general inquiry. If somebody was using any layer in the map viewer, they would get this one, but this one's been labeled as missing HCL reports. Include the node that you're looking for to have included in the report, because that won't come through the report from me. It'll just say there's an inquiry for high crash location. It won't tell me what node or what element, section, or link that you were in. So I need you to give me that little bit of information. Give me the node number if it's an intersection. All right. So that's intersection high crash locations. For current, we've got lines current, which are the same exact thing. So you've got every single element, and these are done for every single element. So between two nodes, that's what these are. These are high crash locations. So 8 or more crashes, CRF over 1.00. Let's zoom into Lewiston just so we can get a look at one of these. All right, we've got the Veterans Memorial Bridge right here. That's a high crash location. We click on that. All right. And I think it's broken into 2 segments here. I'm not 100% sure. Yes. Each section of this bridge, though, is a high crash location. All right. So again, we've clicked on that. We click on the wrench. We go to the high crash location report. And bam, here is the high crash location. Here's the diagram for all the crashes that happened on that section of the bridge. You're going to get the full report that goes with it, the location between this node and that node. And that's what I say when you get one, maybe for a high crash location that hasn't been drawn yet, you get that form that pops up. You just got to fill that out. But the important information is to know node to node. If you tell me that, I don't even need to know the town or anything else because I'll go right to that node. But just by clicking on any of these, and you can go to any of them, because we haven't been up in the county yet. Let's scroll up there. Let's go up into Piscataquis. Yeah, we haven't been into Piscataquis yet. Right there. What's that high crash location? So say you needed that one just for that area. Again, pops it up. Just give me that information on what that location is. So very neat tool. I really like this. This is something we just started. You know, this has only been around since 2020 was the first year that these layers went into effect for these high crash locations. So these are current. So you've got current lines and current nodes, but you've also got historic lines and nodes. So let's just go to historic nodes quick. All right. So what this is we've discussed this before. These are a different color red. So you can have both layers turned on at the same time, but you're likely to cover over one with the other. So these are all of the historic high crash locations, just like with a 10-year map layer. This is 10 years worth. So it goes from, I think we've actually got from 2010 up to 2012 for that 3-year study period. I could be wrong, but just like with any of the other ones, you know, you figure out where you work and say you want to know more than just 3 years. You know, maybe you've got an area, you know, that you need to know more about it. And I'm hoping to find one. That one's only got one. It's got 2 years. So you can see that HCL ID. That's the last 3 years of the 3-year study period. So that's that's the 2020, 2018 to 20. And if you were to click that, you'd get the old report. You get that 2018 to 2020. So we have all the old ones and all of the, you know, we've started on the current study period. That's always a work in progress. It starts sometime around May or April or May of this year. And there are approximately 900 to 1,000 high crash locations, nodes, and elements that we redraw every year. So, you know, we do them as quick as we can. We get them done every year, but, you know, give us some time. And, you know, we've got the lines as well, historic lines. And just like you did with the other ones, you can filter these by county, by city. You could draw, if you wanted to do high crash locations for an entire route, you could either do a polygon or you could do a filter. Because I believe the route number, if you added a condition, I believe you've got element mile point. That's not a good one. Region number route code. You could do one by a route code with a beginning and end mile point. That's getting a little bit more tricky, but the easiest way I would say is to draw a polygon around the area, just like we did earlier, and it would give you all of those high crash locations. And you could export all of those and have all that information for that area right at your fingertips. And that, folks, concludes the map viewer crash layers that I wanted to review with everybody today.